My abuela warned us about the old asylum. She called it La Casa de los Perdidos, the House of the Lost. It sat on a hill overlooking her small town in Puerto Rico, a concrete skeleton slowly being devoured by the jungle. She'd tell us stories, her voice low and serious, about the screams that used to echo from its halls, and the patients who, according to local legends, simply vanished when the place was shut down decades ago. Of course, being 22 and stupid, I saw it as the ultimate urban exploration spot. My cousin Leo, who was just as reckless, was all for it. We packed flashlights and a camera, telling our grandmother we were going for a hike to the waterfalls. The asylum was even more imposing up close. The air was thick and humid, smelling of decay and wet earth. Most entrances were boarded up, but we found a side door, its lock rusted clean off. It groaned open into a long, dark corridor. The plan was simple: get in, take some pictures, get out before sunset. We were maybe an hour in, deep inside the west wing, when we heard it. A deep, metallic clang echoed through the building, followed by the solid, final click of a lock. We looked at each other, flashlights frozen. "The wind?" Leo whispered, though we both knew there wasn't a breath of air in that suffocating place. We ran back to the side door. It was shut tight. The rusted handle wouldn't budge. We were locked in. That's when the other sounds started. At first, it was a faint shuffling, like dry leaves being dragged across concrete. We'd stop, listen, and it would stop too. We told ourselves it was rats or maybe a stray dog that had gotten trapped like us. But the sound wasn't random. It seemed to follow us. When we moved down a hallway, the shuffling would pace us from the other side of the wall. Then came the whispers. They were so quiet you could almost convince yourself you were imagining them. A dry, sibilant hiss that coiled around the edges of the silence. We couldn't make out any words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was pained, desperate. And it wasn't coming from the rooms around us. It was coming from inside the walls. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. We frantically searched for another way out, our flashlight beams cutting frantically through the oppressive darkness. Every hallway looked the same: peeling paint, overturned gurneys, and the suffocating sense of being watched. The shuffling grew louder, more insistent. The whispers started to sound like words just on the verge of being understood, spoken in a hoarse, guttural Spanish. We found a records room, the floor littered with molded patient files. The shuffling was right there with us, just on the other side of the plaster. It was the loudest it had been, frantic and close. Near the floor was a small, rusted ventilation grate. The whispers were coming directly from it. Leo knelt, his face pale in the glow of his flashlight. The sound was clearer now. A single, raspy word, repeated over and over like a broken prayer. Adentro, adentro, adentro. Inside. In a fit of terror and frustration, Leo kicked the wall next to the grate. A large chunk of rotted plaster crumbled away, revealing a dark, narrow cavity behind it, the space between the walls. Suddenly, everything went silent. The shuffling stopped. The whispering stopped. A thick, foul smell like spoiled meat and dust billowed out of the hole. I aimed my light into the opening. For one horrifying, stomach-dropping second, I saw something. It was pale and gaunt, a stick-thin limb covered in graying skin, and it recoiled from the light, pulling back into the suffocating darkness of the crawlspace. Before it vanished, a voice, no longer a whisper but a dry, horrifying hiss right from the hole, said the word one last time. Adentro. We didn't wait to see more. We screamed and ran, a blind, primal terror fueling us. We scrambled back through the maze of corridors and threw ourselves against the locked door, pounding and shouting until our fists were bruised and our throats were raw. It felt like an eternity, but eventually we heard shouting from outside. The police. Our abuela had called them when we never came back. They had to use a crowbar to pry the door open. We tried to explain what we heard, what I saw. They gave us the look you give to hysterical kids, patting us on the back and saying, "Old buildings make strange noises." They did a quick sweep of the asylum and, of course, found nothing. When we showed them the hole in the wall, they just shrugged and said it was probably made by an animal. We left Puerto Rico 2 days later. Leo and I have never, not once, spoken about what happened in that records room. But sometimes, when I'm alone and the house is quiet, I can still hear it. A faint, dry shuffling from just behind my bedroom wall, and a whisper telling me to come inside.